relationship is never easy. And it's even harder when it's not your choice. And add to that, it's with your job. In April 2020, that was exactly where I found myself. I received 9 days notice that I was being placed on an unpaid, indefinite furlough. And a mere 2 weeks after that began, I learned my position was being completely eliminated. It's not that I haven't been through transformational change before in my life. I'm divorced. I built a house. I'm relocated from Houston to New Orleans. But every single one of those changes was a planned major life transformation. And I was the planner. I was the architect for each of those transitions in my life. This unplanned transformation affected me significantly. I immediately experienced the stages of grief. After all, this was a loss in my life. My initial reaction was shock, that denial. I was a professional fundraiser with years of experience, and we were experiencing a global pandemic in which New Orleans was an early epicenter. Didn't my organization need professional staff to interface with our donors now more than ever? As I began to wrap up my work and prepare for the furlough to begin, volunteers also expressed some of the same denial. I then experienced anger. I was losing my source of income with such short notice, and I didn't have a spouse or a partner to help fill that gap. Another wave of anger hit as I learned several of my colleagues and their families were going through the same challenge as well. And then bargaining. Was there something I could have done that would have prevented this? Maybe something I did or didn't do, especially in that month working from home? How could I have avoided this? As the news of my permanent layoff came, I realized it was a business decision, that my organization would continue to move on and do the philanthropic work just with less of us staff. And that brought me to depression. After all, my career is a huge part of my adult identity. I love the chance to make a difference in this world, to be a part of something bigger than myself, to help others through the gift of philanthropy. What would I do now? I knew I needed to answer this question, and I took the time, about 3 weeks between the announcement of my position's elimination and the official end date, to truly reflect on where I wanted to be in my life. For me, that was to stay here in New Orleans and to remain in the philanthropic sector in some way. Once I had come to this realization, I could move into acceptance of this transformation in my life and start to forge the path ahead. This time to reflect was really important, especially for a type A personality like myself. I'm that person who's constantly on the go, checking items off of to-do list. I finally took time to stop and listen to my inner voice. And in fact, it was that inner voice, that gut feeling, which spoke so strongly to me my last day of paid employment. When you're placed on an indefinite furlough, you're not sure if you will be gone for 2 weeks or 6 months, or if you'll even be brought back at all. In realizing this, when I returned to the office to drop off my equipment, I took a box with me to pack my personal effects. I vividly recall thinking, worst case scenario, I am bringing this box back here with me in a few months and I'll be unpacking it. I am so glad I packed that box. Once I received the news of my position being eliminated, that path became so much easier. All that was left to do was attend to human resources matters, drop off my keys, and I was done. I couldn't see it in the moment, but following that gut feeling helped make an easier transition for me in the end. And therein lies the challenge, making a decision without completely knowing the outcome. And a piece of advice that has served me well over the years I received from a therapist. And I was encouraged to make the best decisions I could with the information I had available to me at the time. Not to focus on the past, what had already been done and couldn't be changed, and not to be anxious for the future and what may or may not happen. And the more I stayed mindful and in the present, the more I realized those best decisions to be made were the best decisions to be made for me. Well, actually, for me and my dog. By this point, we had been New Orleanians for 3 years. And if you've ever been to our wonderful city, you know that life moves a little differently here. We celebrate creativity, a joy of living, and the entrepreneurial spirit. It was what drew me to move here, and it's what's taken me down paths that I had always dreamed of deep down my whole life, but was afraid to follow because instead I was doing what I thought I should be doing with my adult life. In her book, Finding Your North Star, Claiming the Life You Are Meant to Live, life coach Martha Beck talks about this difference between our essential selves and our social selves. The essential self is who we are truly meant to be in life, our authentic being, while the social self is who we think we need to be in life, maybe even who we've been conditioned to be in our lives. And I know that I've certainly made decisions before based on what I thought I should be doing. We should be married by a certain age in our life. We should own our own home. We should ask for forgiveness, not permission, especially in work situations. And through her work with clients, Ms. Beck discovered that the closer someone moved to living their essential self and putting aside that mask of the social self, they began to alleviate emotional and even physical pain in cases. And I know I have definitely experienced that myself as I've moved closer and closer to my authentic life. Back to last summer, I began searching for a new job because that's what you should do when you're laid off. Many unknowns were ahead, and I chose to focus on what was in my control. And that was starting with letting my network of colleagues, friends, and family know what I was looking for in a role. And I learned that when you're going through such a transformational life change, if you are looking for help from others, you will find it. But you have to get over the fear of asking for that help and being clear in what it is you're seeking. And that means keeping an open mind because you may be offered help that you weren't seeking, but it could take you down an interesting path. But to that point, you also need to be comfortable in politely declining those offers of help that just aren't going to get you where you go. As I moved through several job searches, it was progressing along as it should. Something didn't feel quite right. Something felt a bit off. It actually reminded me of that meme that was popular earlier in the pandemic. That one where the dog is holding a cup of coffee in a burning room and thinking to himself, "This is fine." That was how I felt. This was fine. It wasn't sparking my joy. And I've been through enough job searches, and the jobs where I ultimately accepted a position were those in which I felt that spark of excitement, of joy, of a chance to contribute to that organization's mission and make a difference in the lives of the people that they help serve. And it just wasn't happening. It's similar to a study that was conducted by Dr. Laura Wang of Harvard Business School. She followed investors who made decisions based on gut feelings. And along the way, she learned that there were keys to this process. The first was that they were making these decisions based on available information to them, both subjective and objective. The decisions were not being made impulsively or emotionally, but rather they were following what they had learned from their past experience. And the more that they tapped into that gut feeling and listened to those past experiences and followed those patterns, the more positive results they experience from their future decisions. Dr. Wang goes on to share that this type of decision-making method is best for those decisions that are outside the day-to-day norm for us. Those decisions where it's practically infeasible to know what the outcome will be. And that reminded me of my job search. There were hopes for how I wanted it to turn out, but did I truly know what the result would be? No. I didn't. So the best I could do was to continue to trust my gut. I continued to explore all the options available to me. The summer progressed along, that federal unemployment bonus was about to expire, and my path presented itself. I received the opportunity and an offer to do contract work in my area of specialty, planned giving. And if you're not familiar with this type of philanthropy, we work with donors to help them consider their legacy to nonprofits, to make a meaningful impact through estate giving. It's the ultimate exercise in making a decision with the best information available to you, trusting the process, and hoping for the best outcome available, especially because you'll likely never see the true outcome of that decision. And what's fitting about this offer is it came from colleagues that I had been networking with for several years. We talked before about opportunities to collaborate, and the right position had not come along until this moment. I made the best decision I could at that time. This was a solid offer, and it was going to be more than I would receive from the state on unemployment if I continued that route. I decided it was time to launch the business I had dreamed of for later in my career, but the one I also happened to reserve a name and website for 5 years earlier. It was time for it to come to life. It was definitely a risk. I'm a little more than 7 months in, and I feel so far this has been the best decision that I could make at this point. There's still road to travel in this journey. And this is where I draw on another piece of advice from therapy, that just because we have more path to go, we shouldn't discount how far we've come. And I also do want to say that going through a layoff like this or leaning into another transformational life experience, I strongly encourage that you look into some mental health resources, be that therapy or life coaching or anything else that can help make sure that you're taking care of you. Because it's not just our physical health that's a priority. In fact, our mental health, if not as important, is maybe even more important to focus on as you're going through an experience like this. What I couldn't see in the moment that I made the decision to become self-employed was that I would see many rewards. On a personal level, it gave me the opportunity to be a better dog parent as my aging pup was going through health concerns over the past few months. And professionally, I started seeing my own value. All the important decisions were now up to me. Who did I want to work with? What kind of work did I want to do? And what impact would I continue to make in my industry? As I answered these questions and began launching the Philanthropy brand, I gained confidence in my value and my worth. See, I had always been that kid in school who had great report cards, good conduct, the employee who received high marks because she followed the rules and the processes and procedures. I'd done a great job of that social self in my life. I did a great job of checking off the boxes for acceptance for others, and it was time to do that for myself. It was time to stand confidently and believe that I knew what I was doing and I can create value in this world. And what that has done is that has given me a renewed sense of purpose, a chance to help others as I have been doing for nearly 20 years in my career, a chance to work with multiple organizations and fundraising colleagues at the same time, exponentially expanding my impact and helping to be a part of something bigger than myself. So whether you believe in guardian angels or the forces of the universe nudging you along, listen if you feel that tap on your shoulder or that sense in your gut. It just might be sending you along your authentic path to your fulfillment. Where do you want to go?